But in the past, when someone's retired, we've always hired the best candidate, whether they're at a bachelor's skill or a master's skill. But this time, we have directed the superintendent to look at hiring staff based on cost. So that is represented in that number as a major change in philosophy for this district.
Thank you. Yes.
I have a question about the new student Minuteman. We were at an unprecedented budget crunch, and we're allowing a student go for $29,000 a year. We pay, I know every child receives the right to an adequate education, but, I mean, we already belong to another consortium. I know I've had this talk with Dr. Troutman before. I mean, no. It's
We have no choice.
$30,000.
We have no choice. If it's
We
a
already provide another
But
kind
if
of
it's a program
vocational
that's
school.
not offered at the Northeast Voc, we have to pay for an approved program. at
Well, I
the
mean, my
Northeast
child
Voc.
would like no study halls next
We
year,
can't.
and that's not offered here either, probably, but
have to, we would
Right.
not have done.
you can, the superintendent can veto.
No.
We can.
The superintendent can veto,
He can veto.
and however, I will tell you, every time that happens, it is overridden by the Department of Education.
Shame on this person that's going to this school.
Right.
Let's be careful. All right, go ahead.
You can draw distinctions amongst a lot of children, and this is something
I
that we're
know.
required to do. So
I mean, $30,000, that's obscene.
it's probably not that far from what we're paying at the boat per student.
Well, maybe there's a reason we shouldn't belong to that consortium then. I mean, this is an unprecedented time in history. We're facing huge budget crunches. Maybe the children just need to stay in the public school.
Unprecedented, but we have responsibilities. We
I
have to live up to those
understand that, but
responsibilities.
we could educate them in this district. They could pay the bus fee to go there, we could save some money that way. I mean, these are difficult decisions, I understand that, but this, I mean, there's huge budget cuts, there's $30,000, maybe 50, that you could educate
Yeah.
other children.
We can. Carl?
Yes, so in closing, the level one cuts are easier said than done. We've also transferred another $50,000 of fees to parents the upcoming year, so these aren't easy to do. I noted earlier, and Dr. Troutman has also spoken to some additional adjustments that are being made to the budget. And the good news was that this stimulus money will allow us to replace some of our operational costs. And we've broken it down here into these categories. I wanted to emphasize the fact that this IDEA money, which is special education in nature, isn't free and clear. You can't just say, okay, we'll just transfer some existing obligations to those funds, but rather we have to be very careful on a quarterly basis to prove how we're spending these monies. Those top two rows amount to $320,000. And as you move down that list, you can see there are some funds available for pre-kindergarten training, and also the ARRA money is the sum of money that we intend to use to provide relief from the budget in the area of, it's the so-called recovery. The way these monies are attached, the money comes with strings attached, either recovery or investment. And recovery is funds that you're intending to spend to help the nation's economy recover. So you're encouraged to use those funds to prevent layoffs. The investment is supposed to be funds that you're using not to reduce your operational activities, but rather to invest in your building. You know, whether it was a capital improvement, or whether it was textbooks. It's something that is not just expunged from your operational budget. Lastly, at the bottom, as you can see, there's a $306,000 figure, and that relates to a reduction in our, what we're calling our salary set-aside. We do have collective bargaining contracts that are yet to be settled, and as part of the budget building process, we did reserve some funds to support the successful completion of these collective bargaining negotiations. And the school committee and the superintendent have directed that we reduce that set-aside by that amount.
Can I ask a question
Yes?
or clarification? Dr. Troutman talked specifically about the 160,000, 160,000, which makes up the 320. And then you talked about the bucket of $853,000, which would use 400 for 1 year, 400 the next year.
Yes.
Now, your line item only has the $200,000 for recovery. Where's the $200,000 for investment under ARRA for the foundation level budget?
As Dr. Trobe mentioned, it's not shown at this stage. We know we have these funds available to us, and we're still awaiting further clarification on the manner in which we're going to be allowed to spend it. On one hand, if it is pure and simple investment, then we will not be allowed really to reduce our operational budget because there are going to be strict controls on the manner in which those funds are used. On the other hand, if the definitions come in and say that they're loosened, we will be able to assuage our operational costs. Oddly enough, we have yet to see the grant application, the criteria, the process, or the deadlines for this. So we're listing the $200,000, as you note, Deanna, as money that we can use for recovery, but we're reluctant to list the other $200,000 yet until we know more about it.
But actually, if we can use that for investment, and the point is the capital items, we have a 5-year capital plan. We've held back on our capital articles last April town meeting, and again, for this year, the town hasn't been able to fund a capital article. So we have millions of dollars worth of things we could do with that $200,000. It will never go to waste. There are textbooks that we constantly approve but never purchase. Sets of, new updated science books that we could definitely use in world languages. And there are even ideas related to the building. Our high school renovation project is not moving along as quickly as some of our kids would like. So we could use that money, say, to invest in a science lab, which is one of the items on our capital plan, and that's in the range of $200,000. That's one area that our program, our science program, really suffers in. We don't have adequate space or equipment for chemistry and biology labs to take place. So we have lots of ideas of what we would do if we were limited to the investment streams with $200,000 for fiscal year 2010.
And the IDEA money, David, you mentioned earlier the idea of hopefully not having this be budget items and we just don't get back in the soup again in a couple of years. But with both of these paraprofessional salaries and then taking over that program in the middle school, those are things that we would
Yes.
expect to be ongoing programs. So
Right.
you have to use the money, but I'm kind of just delaying the inevitable. That's going to be a big problem.
It is.
In a year or two, right?
Yeah, I said, the bottom line, Jeff, is that even whatever money from the ARRA that we put in here, we're just delaying the inevitable. I mean, that's all this is. And, my hope is, I don't have a lot of hope, but that in 2 years, the state figures out how to fund education properly. Now, we've had about 500 years to try to get it right. Maybe the next 2 will be the magic 2, but, yeah.
But the investment piece under the IDEA money is for that new program.
Right.
So we stop paying the tuition. We have a program with seats that we can put North Reading students in, and we stop paying that tuition.
Understood, but it's something we hope to continue to do for that reason.
Right.
Right.
But
So
but that applies. I mean, there's not a restriction that says that, not you indicated that it had to be something that wasn't a budget item. That was some
That's
sort of-
program.
Well, you're talking about for the investment?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, for the
Yeah,
investment.
I think the returns that we're going to see, or what we project for next year, FY10, because it's the first year that we're making that change,
Yeah.
I don't expect to come away with a great profit, if you will,
Yeah.
or gain. But in subsequent years, as you begin to build this program up, we may also find that it's a program that we might draw students into and be able to charge an out-of-district tuition.
Self-supporting.
Right.
Self-supporting.
Well, no, it has to be self-supporting, right. I expect it to be self-supporting.
Oh, okay, well, there you go.
Yes.
So you expect the savings to be that
I
significant?
I wouldn't have recommended this if I didn't think it wouldn't have been self-supporting. But the recovery piece, you're right, it's a very slippery slope. And if you target that money, as you said, toward teacher or administrator salaries or portions of it, you have to write off 9%. So you would deduct 9% from that 160. I think that's a pretty hefty price to pay. That's why I targeted toward, in this case, paraprofessional.
Why are paraprofessionals considered like a different category?
It's just under how the federal,
So they allow for that and they won't really.
correct, right. It is exempt from the, they're actually targeting this toward retirement costs, which is ironic because if it's a teacher, all teacher retirement is self-supporting. Any teacher or administrator in the Massachusetts Teachers Retirement is paying 11% for their retirement. There's not a kick-in from the state on that. But other employees, such as paraprofessionals, are in a different retirement system, and therefore, that 9% doesn't kick in.
No, I want to explain one more thing before Carl gets to the budget unknowns, which are even more troubling. But the one other issue this is causing, and this isn't pulling out the sympathy card for David and Carl and staff, but what they have to now do, they have to deconstruct the budget. They have to go in and take things out of the budget that will then fit the grants that we're applying for. So we can't just take the money and put it in our budget. So they have to make sure that everything they take out of the budget flies by whatever regulations we get from the federal government, so we can then apply for the money and get it. And I think it's pretty painstaking and time, I wouldn't say wasting, but time-consuming effort, along with everything else we have going on.
Like the new software program?
Right. So that's
I
one.
think you might refer to it as not very stimulating.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, that's a nice.
a right way to put it.
Okay, so if you just go back 2 slides at the beginning, remember we said we started out with a level services budget. We made 2 large adjustments to it that we've just described, the level 1 cuts and the additional adjustments. So our adjusted budget request is down to $22,960,000. So we've finished discussing these, and we're now dealing with a timing issue here. The budget process really begins in October. We start to build our budget at that time because we want to have an early budget, but that's the problem with an early budget is you sometimes have changes that take place as the process unfolds. So in recent, let's say days, recent weeks, it's actually days, we've been hit with 2 other unfortunate outcomes in the budget unknowns category. And, we're just beginning to understand that we have additional special education costs that we are beset with, and we also know that in the current Senate budget deliberations, there is a potential significant decrease in the circuit breaker costs. Traditionally, circuit breaker costs are funded at a 72% level, and depending on what the outcome is of those discussions when it finally goes to Ways and Means, that circuit breaker will be down as low as 50% of the real costs of that program. So we haven't even factored these 2 costs into these slides, into the numbers shown in these slides. It's just 2 additional issues that we have to deal with.
Carl,
Yes?
can you remember a time when that circuit breaker reimbursement was as low as 50%?
No, it never has been. I think we're in the 4th or 5th year of the circuit breaker program in the first place, and the reimbursement rate has never been below 70%.
And just my uneducated guess on why that dropped, because of the availability of IDEA stimulus money. There's an expectation that you have money over here to use, so the state will not be funding the circuit breaker at the same percentage.
Makes it easier for them to not have to cut somewhere else, because
So-
there's federal money sitting out there that we could have used for something else.